Hi everyone, my name is Sofyan. So today I will explain the true meaning of the Ten Commandments. So the Ten Commandments are the laws given by God to us humans, and first were given to the Jewish people and exactly to Moses. But after the Jewish people refused to obey the Ten Commandments, God sent Jesus to pay for the guilty Jewish people. And after Jesus paid for the guilty Jewish people, the Jewish people still refused to obey the Ten Commandments. So God decided to make these Ten Commandments to everyone who lives on this planet. So since Jesus was lifted up to heaven, these Ten Commandments are to all of people who live on the planet. And the reason why God gave these Ten Commandments to humans, so during our lifetimes here on earth, we should live according to the Ten Commandments, so when we die we will go to heaven and be forever. So now let's proceed with the true explanation of the Ten Commandments. So number one, God said, do not have other gods, only me. So there is only one God. We should not have other gods. There is only one. We should only have Him as God. So there is only one God. So now I'm going to give some information about God. So God is one. So the number one in the numbers symbolizes God. Why? Because when you start counting, you start with one. And God is the beginning. He's the start. God existed and everything else existed. So one in the numbers symbolizes God. And if people want to know also who is God, the answer is God is a spirit. And if people want to know who is the creator, so God is the creator. He's the only one who has the power to create. God is the creator of visible and the invisible stuff. The visible stuff, the stuff you can see with your eyes. Example, humans, trees, oceans, animals, anything you can see with your eyes are visible stuff, and who made them? God, who is a spirit. And the invisible stuff are stuff you cannot see with your own eyes. Example, demons, devils, angels, spirits. Each one of us has a spirit, but no one can see his own spirit. And who made the invisible stuff? God, who is the spirit. And if people also want to know about God's existence, who made God? So the answer is nobody made God. God existed. But everything else that exists because God existed. So God existed and He is a spirit, and He made the visible and the invisible stuff. And now the letter A. The letter A in the alphabet symbolizes God. Why? Because when you start the alphabet, you start with A. So He's the beginning. He is the start. So the letter A in the alphabet symbolizes God. And I'm going to explain how the letter A also symbolizes God in the alphabet. So look here, I wrote one and another one here. And by simply extending the edges for one with the red, I got a shape of an A. This one looks like that one. It's just that one is in the incline and that one is standing up. So by simply extending the edges for one with the red, I got a shape of an A. And as I said, one symbolizes God in the numbers, so A symbolizes God in the alphabet. So 1 equals A, and both of them symbolize God. And if 1 equals A, that means 2 equals B, 3 equals C, 4 equals D, 5 equals E, 6 equals F, 7 equals G, and 8 equals H, and 9 equals I, and 10 equals J. So next, God is 3 in 1. So God is one because He made a human body for Himself and the Holy Spirit, so He's 3 in 1. And here I wrote one with 3 different colors: the yellow, the white, and the red. So the red symbolizes the Holy Spirit God made for Himself, and the white symbolizes God who is a spirit, and the yellow symbolizes a body that God made for Himself. So God is 3 in 1. He is a spirit, He made a human body for Himself, and He made the Holy Spirit for Himself as well. And obviously if God makes Holy Spirits, He is holy too, and He is a spirit. So now I finished with the first commandment, and I gave some information about God. But before I proceed to the rest of the commandments, I'm going to give some information about 10 numbers and 10 letters. And the reason why I'm doing that, to better understand the commandments. So now I'm going to explain B and C and D all together. And I'm going to talk about the human creation. Who made humans and how He made them. So as I said, the only one who has the power to create the visible and the invisible stuff is God. So God made humans. And the way He made them, He did it that way. So first, He made B, who is a man. And from the man He made, He took a rib, the C. C looks like a rib. If you look at C, it looks like a human rib. So God made first man, and from the first man He took a rib. That one you can take it from here. So He made first the first man, and He took a rib, and He made the first woman. So now we have a woman and a man. And what happened later, so the woman and the man, they had sex. And the woman became pregnant and became a D. That means C, who is a woman, when she became pregnant, it became a D. And when you look at the D shape here, the circle here, any pregnant woman, when you look at her, her belly forms a D shape. Any pregnant woman, her belly forms a D shape. Any pregnant woman forms this shape in her belly. So this is how God made humans. So He made first a man. From the first man He took a rib, that is C. He made the woman. And the woman and the man, they had sex, and the woman became pregnant. So D symbolizes a pregnant woman, and B symbolizes a man, and C symbolizes the woman. And obviously 2 equals B, and 3 equals C, and 4 equals D. So D symbolizes a pregnant woman, and 4 symbolizes a pregnant woman too. And 3 symbolizes a woman, and C symbolizes a woman too. And B symbolizes a man, and 2 symbolizes a man as well. So now I'm going to do number 5. So 5 equals E, and 3 equals C. So the way I'm going to read it here, so 3 and E, they look the same. It's just one facing that way, and that one is facing the other way. And what looks like a woman, only another woman. That means 5 symbolizes a woman, and E symbolizes a woman as well. Next, number 6. 6 equals F, and E equals 5. And the way I'm going to read it here, from an E, you can take an F. But from an F, you cannot take an E. What that means? From a woman, you can have a baby boy. But from a man, you cannot have a baby girl. And everybody knows that the woman gives birth to babies. So 6 or F, they symbolize a man. Number 7. 7 equals G. And who has the G spot? Obviously, is a woman. So 7 or G, they symbolize a woman. Number 8. 8 equals H. And the word human starts with an H. So H symbolizes human in the alphabet, and 8 symbolizes human in the numbers. And when you look at number 8 here, it looks like a sign of infinity. What that means? That means humans, they exist forever. So once you exist, your existence is forever. And if you look at number 8 here, it has 2 circles. And each one of them symbolizes life. So the bottom circle represents a life here on earth. Look, you exist here and you live, and when you finish the bottom circle, you die. you leave the body here on earth and the spirit goes up and your life continues. So there is afterlife. Humans exist forever. Number 9. 9 equals I. 9 equals I. And 9 also equals 1 plus 8. So 9 symbolizes God. Why? Who is 1? 1 is God, who is a spirit, and 8 equals H, and H symbolizes a human. So God, who is a spirit, made a human body for himself. So the number 9 symbolizes God. And the letter I here, the point by itself symbolizes God, and the line symbolizes God's body. Because as I said, God is a spirit, and he made a human body for himself. Number 10. 10 equals J, or J equals 10 is the same. So the way I'm going to read it here, every man has a circle in the back and one in the front. What I mean by that? Every man has an S-hole in the back that looks like a 0, and every man has a dick in the front that looks like 1. So J symbolizes a man, and 10 symbolizes a man as well. So now I give some information about 10 numbers and 10 letters. So now I'm going to proceed with the rest of the commandments. So number 2. 2 equals B, and B symbolizes a man. So in the second commandment, God said, do not make idols. So God is telling a man, do not make idols. And obviously, if he's telling a man, you should not make idols, so he's telling to all of us, because these 10 commandments are to all of us. So why we should not make idols? First, because God said do not make idols. And second, when a person makes an idol, he bows down to it, he worships it in his house, or he makes a place for it where he gathers with a bunch of people and they all worship together. So if we don't have the right to make idols, we don't have the right either to make a place for them where we worship them. And I say we cannot even make any place of worship of any kind. The reason why, because God didn't mention worship in the 10 commandments. So we should not worship or make a place of worship. And the only laws given by God, just the 10 commandments. Anything out of the 10 commandments is not from God. So God didn't mention worship in the 10 commandments, so we should not worship or make a place of worship. Simple as that. We should only do what God said. If people say why these people are making places of worship, simply because they didn't understand the 10 commandments. If they understood the 10 commandments, they would know that God didn't mention worship in the 10 commandments, so they should not worship or make any place of worship of any kind. Because they didn't understand, they are making places of worship, they worship, and they teach a whole lot of things out of the 10 commandments. And is not from God, and we should not follow them, we should not do what they say. So the bottom line, we should not make idols or any place of worship of any kind. Number 3. 3 equals C, and C symbolizes a woman. So in the 3rd commandment, God said, do not take the name of the Lord in vain. So the true meaning of this commandment, God is telling a woman she should take seriously the things that God said about her. So she should not take what God said about her in vain. So she should take them seriously. And if people say what kind of things that God said about women, everything that is in the 10 commandments, wherever God mentioned a woman in the 10 commandments or said stuff about her, that's what God said about women. And if God is telling a woman she should take seriously the things he said about her in the 10 commandments, so we should all take seriously the things that God said about women, because these 10 commandments are to all of us. And how are we gonna take seriously the things that God said about women? So if God said a woman should do that, we need to make sure she's doing it. if God said the woman should not do that, we need to make sure she's not doing it. Number 4. 4 equals D, and D symbolizes a pregnant woman. And in the 4th commandment, God said, remember the Sabbath to keep it holy. And who is the Sabbath? The Sabbath equals a pregnant woman. And in the beginning of this commandment, God said, remember. So, as I said, the Sabbath equals a pregnant woman. That means God is talking to the husband. So he's telling him to make sure his pregnant wife stays holy. And how a husband will make sure his pregnant wife stays holy, he needs to make sure she keeps the commandments. She is not breaking the 10 commandments. And I want to highlight 2 points here. If God is telling a man to make sure his pregnant wife stays holy, obviously he needs to make sure he stays holy too. And number 2, here the Sabbath equals a pregnant woman. So there is a woman and a baby. So God is telling the husband to make sure his unborn baby stays holy. And obviously when the baby is born, he needs to make sure he stays holy as well. And these 10 commandments are to all of us, so we should all make sure the pregnant woman stays holy. So that's the true explanation of the 4th commandment. Number 5. 5 equals E, and E symbolizes a woman. So in the 5th commandment, God said, honor your father and your mother. So God is telling a woman when she is in her parents' house to honor her parents. And how she's going to do that, she needs to take care of them. Be nice, respectful, kind, gentle, in general. Take care of your parents. Help them. And I want to highlight 1 point here. So if God is telling a woman when she is in her parents' house to honor her parents, so obviously when that woman got married and married someone, she goes to her husband's house. So obviously she needs to take care of her parents a lot, as she took care of her parents when she was in her parents' house. So that's the true meaning of the 5th commandment. Number 6. 6 equals F, and F symbolizes a man. So in the 6th commandment, God said, do not kill. But actually there is 2 types of killings. There is physical killings and spiritual killings. So I'm going to start with the physical killings. So physical killings is killing someone with something, and that person can no longer live here on earth. He dies, he leaves the body here on earth, and the spirit goes up. So we should not kill people. And so you cannot kill someone, and you cannot kill yourself also. So you cannot kill people or kill yourself, because God said to not kill. But there is one exception: if an evil person wants to kill you. So if you can arrest that evil person, that would be much better. Put him in jail, make him pay the price, that would be much better. But if the evil person wants to kill you, and if you won't kill him, he will kill you, in that case, if you kill him, you are not guilty of murder, because he's an evil person. So he takes full responsibility what happened, even death. But if everything goes normal, we should not kill people or ourselves. Now I'm going to talk about the spiritual killings, or spiritual death. It's the same. Killing or death is the same. So, but before I will talk about the spiritual killings, so I'm going to talk about the spiritual life. Because when God said do not kill spiritually, that means He wants you to stay spiritually alive. So I'm going to talk about the spiritual life first. I'm going to take this table. So now I'm going to talk about the spiritual life. So I will explain this sex, marriage, divorce, and marriage and death and the exception in God's way. If you do them in God's way, you are spiritually alive. So I'm going to start with sex and marriage. So sex and marriage in God's way only between men and women. That's it. Only between men and women. Now if you want to marry, you accept the marriage is only between men and women. Now if you want to marry, you need to meet two requirements. So if you're someone who wants to marry, you need to meet two requirements. Only a virgin and out of consanguinity. What that means? That means before you marry, you need to be a virgin and marry a virgin and out of your blood family, and that is called the table of consanguinity. This is the only marriage God accepts. Now I'm going to explain divorce in God's way. Divorce only if unfaithful, and you should. What I mean by that? You can only divorce your partner if he is unfaithful. And if your partner is unfaithful, you should do it. This is the only reason you have to divorce your partner. This is God's way. Now I'm going to explain remarriage in God's way. So, remarriage only a virgin and out of consanguinity. What that means? So before you were married before, and you divorce your partner because he is unfaithful. You're still in God's way, because I'm explaining God's way, how to be spiritually alive. So after you divorce your partner because he's unfaithful, so first you need to check your status. What I mean by that? You have kids or you don't. So if you have kids, you cannot remarry or have sex. You should stay like that until you die. But if you don't have kids, you have the right to remarry. But when you remarry, you need to remarry someone who is virgin and out of your blood family. And that is called the table of consanguinity. So this is the only remarriage God accepts. Now I'm going to explain death in God's way. So death happens when a couple married and one of them dies. So we have a widow or a widower. So a widow or a widower, they cannot remarry or have sex whether they have kids or they don't. They should stay like that until they die. So this is God's way. And the last one is an exception. So this exception is if a man married and died and does not have kids, if he has a brother and he is virgin, obviously not married, he should marry his brother's wife. What I mean by that? So if a man got married and later on he died and he doesn't have kids with his wife, if he has a brother who is virgin, obviously not married, he should marry his brother's wife and take it as a wife. So if you do these six I explained in God's way, you are spiritually alive. And that's what God wants when He said do not kill spiritually. That means He wants you to stay spiritually alive. Now I'm going to explain how to be spiritually dead. I'm going to put the table back. So I'm going to explain the spiritual death. I'm going to use sex and marriage for men and women in the first place. So sex or marriage for men and women, both of them. So if a man or woman had sex or married someone else who is not virgin, they are spiritually dead. Men or women, if they had sex or married someone who is already married, they are spiritually dead. Men or women, if they had sex or married someone who has kids, they are spiritually dead. Men or women, if they had sex or married someone who is an unfaithful divorced person, they are spiritually dead. What I mean by unfaithful divorced person? So he was married to his partner and his partner divorced him because he cheated on him. So you cannot marry or have sex with someone who is an unfaithful divorced person. Next, men or women, if you had sex or married someone who is in your table of consanguinity, you are spiritually dead. So table of consanguinity equals blood family. So you cannot marry or have sex with someone who is in your blood family. Next, men or women, if you had sex or married someone who is a widow or a widower, you are spiritually dead. Now I'm going to talk about sex or marriage for men only. So if a man had sex or married another man, he's spiritually dead. If a man had sex or married something else, animals, something else, could be anything, he is spiritually dead. And now I'm going to talk about marriage for women. If a woman married another woman, she is spiritually dead. If a woman married something else, animals or something else, she is spiritually dead. Now I'm going to talk about divorce for both of them, men or women. If you divorce your partner not because he's unfaithful, you are spiritually dead. Now I'm going to explain remarriage for both, men or women. So if you remarry someone who is not virgin and not out of the consanguinity, you are spiritually dead. Now I'm going to explain death for both, men or women. That means widow or widower. So widow or widower, if they remarry or had sex, they are spiritually dead. And the last one is the exception. So the exception, as I said, if you do it in God's way, you are spiritually alive. But if you do it out of this context, out of God's way, you are spiritually dead. So in this case, if a man dies, and so his wife, she is a widow. So if she has her husband's brother who is virgin, not married, she can marry him. But if her husband dies and he doesn't have brothers who are not virgin, she should stay like that. Because I said a widow or a widower, if they remarry or they have sex, they would be spiritually dead. So if you do any of these, I said if you do them, you are spiritually dead. That means you are spiritually dead. So now I finish with the sixth commandment. And in the sixth commandment, God was telling the man, do not kill. So obviously he's talking to all of us. So everything he said about the six commandments applies to all of us, because these 10 commandments are to all of us. So now number 7. 7 equals G, and G symbolizes a woman, because a woman has the G spot. God said do not commit adultery. And obviously if he's telling a woman do not commit adultery, he's telling to all of us we should not commit adultery. Because these 10 commandments are to all of us. And now I'm going to talk about adultery. What is adultery? Adultery equals a spiritual death. A spiritual death equals adultery. What I mean by that, whoever committed adultery, he is spiritually dead. Whoever is spiritually dead, he committed adultery. So God said do not commit adultery. So if you want to commit adultery, keep the things I said about marriage, sex and divorce and remarriage and death and the exception in God's way. If you keep them in God's way, you are spiritually alive. That means you didn't commit adultery. But if you do any of those he said, if you do them, you are spiritually dead. That means also you committed adultery. So adultery equals a spiritual death, and the spiritual death equals adultery. So now I'm going to do number 8. I'm going to put the table back. So in the 8th commandment, God said, do not steal. And this commandment is very simple. What is stealing? Do not take something is not yours. Simple as that. Number 9. 9, God said, do not bear false witness against your neighbor. And what that means? He said false witness, that something is not true. And before I explain it, who is your neighbor? So your neighbor is everybody is your neighbor. It's just one lives closer to you and one away from you. Everybody is your neighbor. So in this commandment he said false witness. That means something is not true. And what's not true? Anything that's not the 10 commandments is fake, is not from God. So he's talking about his words. So he's saying, do not add what I didn't say and say it to other people. So in lucid term, so you cannot go to your neighbor and tell him about stuff that are not from God, stuff out of the Ten Commandments, because anything that's out of the Ten Commandments is not from God. So you cannot go to your neighbor and tell him stuff out of the Ten Commandments and you tell him you should do it, this is from God. And you cannot accept your neighbor to come to you and tell you this is from God and actually is not from God, and he would tell you you should do that. And how you're going to know if something is from God or not? The Ten Commandments are from God, but anything else is not from God. Simple as that. But you can go to your neighbor and tell him about the Ten Commandments, because this is true, not false. So you can go to your neighbor and tell him about the Ten Commandments, and you can tell him you have to do it because this is from God. And your neighbor has the right to come to you to tell you about the Ten Commandments. And if he tells you you should do it, you cannot be offended because he's bringing something good to you. Because the Ten Commandments are from God and are to all of us. So the bottom line, you can go to your neighbor and tell him about the Ten Commandments. Your neighbor can come to you and tell you about the Ten Commandments, but you cannot go to your neighbor and tell him stuff out of the Ten Commandments, and your neighbor cannot come to you and tell you stuff out of the Ten Commandments. Number 10, the last one. In the Ten Commandments, God said, do not covet. So I'm gonna take this table. So in the 10th commandment, God said, do not covet. And there is two types of people in life. There are married ones and the single ones. So if you are married, man or woman, that's it, you are done. You cannot covet anybody else. You have your partner, live your life according to the 10 commandments, and deal with your life. But if you are a single person, man or woman, these types of people you cannot covet. Number 1, you cannot covet someone who is not virgin. Number 2, you cannot covet someone who is already married. Number 3, you cannot covet someone who has kids. Number 4, you cannot covet someone who is an unfaithful divorced person. What I mean by unfaithful divorced person, he was married and his partner divorced him because he cheated on him. So you cannot covet someone who is an unfaithful divorced person. Number 5, you cannot covet a widow or a widower. And the number 6, you cannot covet someone who is in your table of consanguinity, and that is called your blood family. So now I'm done with the true explanation of the 10 commandments. And if you are someone who's watching this video, if you broke the 10 commandments, there is hope, there is a second chance. So stop doing the 10 commandments today. And if you have kids, teach them God's way, because these 10 commandments are from God and are to all of us. And the good that comes out of the 10 commandments is heaven, and heaven, I wish it to every one of us. And thank you for watching this video, and have a good day, everyone.